So he's like what happens after Indiana Jones saves the artifact. Oh, he's here. Okay. Give me 3 minutes tops. 3 minutes tops. Okay. Talk soon. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Callback with me, Lauren Allen. Today we're going to be watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we have a special guest, Taylor Larsen. So let's get into it. Guys, we're doing Indiana Jones today. Let's get into it. George Lucas and Philip Kaufman. So originally, George Lucas had this idea for an archaeologist type adventure movie. He and Philip Kaufman wrote a version of this script called Indiana Smith. And then George was like,
hey, Steven, would you want to direct this?
And he's like,
Oh my gosh, yeah. But can we not call it Indiana Smith? Can we call it Indiana Jones instead?
they came up with Indiana Jones together. It ended up earning $354 million, even though Superman 2 was coming out at the same time and they didn't think it was gonna do well in the box office. But it ended up becoming one of the most popular films that year. They went to a couple of studios and they were like,
Hey, we want to make this, but we have some stipulations. We want all the rights, all of the creative control, and you just get to distribute it.
and the studios were like,
No.
so then they went to a different studio and they were like,
What if we let you have access to some of the rights for the next movies? And we'll make sure that there's some stipulations.
because apparently Steven was known for going over time a little bit and a little bit over budget. So with those stipulations in place, the studios were like,
Hey, that sounds good to us.
so then they made the movie. Brilliant, wonderful. And now it's one of the most iconic films ever. With that, let's get into the film. Let's get into Indiana Jones. Let's dig it up. Get it together. Okay, love you, bye. I love this movie. I haven't seen it in so long though. John Rhys Davies. Why don't I remember him being in this movie? John Williams, I mean, come on. My boy Steven. Why was he mugging? I don't care. I forgot. Actors, man. You know? And that's me in a haunted house. Do not take me. Do not invite me. Actually invite me. Just know that I will refuse. Will you hold this for me? What is this, your first time in a what is this place? Is this your first time in a holy relic? And that's what I thought. Harrison. No. Get out. Get out immediately. Yeah, but it's okay. It's okay. You're Indiana Jones. Don't you know that? You're gonna be fine. That one didn't get me. I remembered that one. Oh, no. Don't get squished. I do want to know what the process was for filming the boulder. Honestly, for filming all of this. Steven, let's talk sometime. Oh, and you know what? Crazy enough, I need us to bring back arch nemesis. Bring them back. I need somebody to hate enough, but is also professional in what they do. And so it's hard to hate them. That's what I need. Fine. Get rid of my fish. Uh-huh. There's a big snake in the plane! And also people being afraid of things. This is great. I forgot about that. Same girl, same. I love you. I don't know if I knew that Indiana Jones was a period piece. Obviously it is. Ugh. Character reveal. I remember thinking Marianne was the coolest. Which, I mean, she is. Now, why would you grab it like that? No. With his little unbuttoned shirt. Not the monkey saluting. This is why we need live trained animals. Animals can do a lot. And I know they're a liability, but this CGI stuff that's been going on lately, it's not it. I feel like a frying pan would be better than a knife. You can keep it farther away from you, you know? Yeah, point exactly. Every time. Oh, can we? And that's suspense for you. Maybe it's where this giant hole is. Not this guy. I'm not gonna help at all, but lift it. It's okay, it's not that hard. Maria got scared. The snake wrangler on this thing, that must have been crazy. Beautiful. Interesting. I don't want it. It's beautiful. He goes, is he gonna light them all on fire? What is he doing with nunchucks? That's not nunchucks. What is that? Oh, there's so much I forgot about in this movie. I feel like there's no way that just the two of them would be able to carry that. I don't know how light it is. If you're a scientist, tell me how heavy that is. Yeah, why would they just throw her down there like that? Ah! Ew. This is just like the Lego Indiana Jones game. I remember this scene. Oh no. Okay, little spin. My eyes! My eyes! Oh gosh. No, 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 no. Nobody ever taught Marianne how to. Well, oh no, 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 no. Oh. Remember when they cast Shia LaBeouf as his son in the 4th movie? I just forgot about that. I don't know, I'm making this up as I go. Oh, Wilhelm scream. That's a shot you only do once. I hope. Indiana, don't get shot. Yo, he is so strong. Get out of my spot. Hey, yo. Bruh, just let her help you. Me, with a forehead kiss. This doesn't feel like a very fair game of finders keepers. Oh no, he's too big and strong. He doesn't fit his uniform. Right. My parents would always cover my eyes during this part as a kid, so I'm a little nervous. Dang. He's like, who's more qualified than me, my guy? The police are getting in on this too. Why does it kind of work? All right, let's talk about it. So I don't think you guys are ready. Our next guest, Taylor Larsen, is an archivist for Disney. He's so graciously accepted the invitation to come and talk with us. Without further ado, we're gonna talk to him about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay, so we're gonna welcome Taylor Larsen. Okay, Taylor, tell us about you. Tell us about what you do, what got you into archival history, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here with you. So I currently sit in the Walt Disney Archives, corporate archives. The Walt Disney Archives was the first studio archives to really be founded. Mm-hmm. A lot of the rest of the studios followed suit. For instance, like Netflix just in the past 2 years started their own archives. Okay. And I'm pretty close friends with the first few archivists that work for Netflix archives. Yeah. But because a lot of them came from Disney. So Disney kind of did set this gold standard of preserving cinema history and all of that. So I got into that because I had a big history in museums. Through grad school, I worked in Philadelphia with museum collections, and post-grad school, I worked in preserving historic oil paintings, while also working with, just different institutions across the East Coast that were loaning artwork to each other, and understanding how the movement and placement of art between institutions was really interesting. The reality is, I found out I could be paid more doing what I was doing, but for a company like Disney, because in the museum world, they're not-for-profit institutions, so there's a lot of the funding is mainly from government or local donors and all of that. Therefore, Disney is very much a for-profit institution. Yes. And so they have this corporate archive that functions as kind of like a museum collection with similar roles to what a museum field would be. Right. So I kind of was a good natural fit. But it took a couple years to network and to cold email people on LinkedIn and be like, hi, I want to set up an interview. I'm not a Disney adult, but I like it. I like history and film history. And so the Disney Archives, it was founded in 1970 by archivist Dave Smith was his name. And so his mission from the company was to collect and preserve materials that are significant to the Walt Disney Company that would just obviously be of use for future generations, for research or, all of that stuff. But today it is a lot of working with production from FX, Hulu, all the entities under the Disney umbrella. And we're looking at, production use things, screen use things, also theme park things, but mainly I feel like a lot of it is living in LA. I like it because, because I never thought I would be in the Hollywood scene, especially within a museum context, but here I'm working closely with production teams that are wrapping the next season of The Bear or this or that, and then they're turning over assets to the Disney Archives, and I get to be a middleman for that.
That's so cool. So how far back do all of these, you know,
Yeah, these historic
like
items,
these relics.
date- yeah.
Yeah, because I know that like Disney was such a forward thinker in this process, right? Like he's like one of the first to really incorporate Technicolor and like, you know, these different technologies that I imagine, you know, a good chunk of that stuff is lost, but a good chunk of it is also saved. So like what does that look like, and what are we seeing from
Yes,
that today?
Yeah, I love that. So it dates back to 200 BC. Just kidding. The mouse is yesterday, today, and
The mouse
always.
built his vault.
The mouse has always been around. No, it actually dates, like our earliest artifacts do date back to 1920s, 1923, the contract that started the Walt Disney Company, to those things that we have that are like paper archives, paper materials, documents that we're preserving, correspondence, telegrams, all of those things, you know, telegraph from Walt to his brother when he lost the rights to Oswald, who was like the character before Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Those types of things we have. So it dates back to like 100 years, century of assets. Interesting you bring up like the technological advancements. There are things that we wish we had that we don't, but back in like the 50s and 60s when they're making these films, they weren't, and even creating like a company, 40s even, the animation, 30s, they weren't thinking necessarily about, and probably like we do this today too, or we have a better mindset now, but when you're creating something like historic, you're not really thinking
This is
ahead.
going to be historic.
Yeah, you're not thinking like one day millions of people around the world will know about Disney and are going to want a piece of this.
Right.
So, and we saw that with, and it's like widely published how this kind of came to be, but for instance, when they made Mary Poppins, the company then just like, they weren't saving anything from production, or they would and just reuse it for other productions.
Right.
Like shoes that Julie Andrews wore in Jolly Holiday scene were then later used in other Disney movies and just painted different colors.
Oh, that's
and so it's like frustrating, funny as like a historian, because you're like, oh, well, we'd want those shoes as they existed from the Jolly
Right.
Holiday scene, but they went through different iterations of different actresses that wore them in another Disney production and were
Right.
painted over, you know, which then is also kind of cool. But then
Right.
it's like, it's not the same object because it has been altered.
Right.
But so yeah, they weren't thinking about like this pair of shoes would be nice in the Smithsonian one day, like the ruby
Right.
slippers are.
Right.
You know, and funny enough, it's like Walt's wife, Lillian, when he had passed, and she was working with Dave Smith, this archivist, she had like donated a lot of his personal items and clothes to like Goodwill. And because she just was not one that was like a sentimental,
Right.
like she also just probably did think like, well, these are my, I mean, for her, it was her husband. It was just her husband's
Right.
stuff, not Walt Disney, the man of the legend, you know?
Right.
So she like donated a lot of his stuff. And so we always kind of laugh. It's like, too bad we have like a tie or a hat from him, but we don't have like, some lucky schmuck out there probably has Walt Disney's like jacket, you know, that he's when, that his like grandpa got at a Goodwill and then handed down. I don't know. Same back with Mary Poppins, like the carpet bag, the iconic carpet bag was given away as like a company-wide, partnered with Kraft Foods, like this giveaway in promoting Mary Poppins.
Right.
It was like given away with like a cash prize with like this sweepstakes thing in the 60s. And so someone won the sweepstakes, kept the cash, didn't really want the carpet bag, so they just put it in like, throughout the years, like it was later found in some attic, and it was identified properly as like, this is the bag from Mary Poppins, the iconic carpet bag. And then the Walt Disney Company was able to acquire it back, but we had to like purchase it back, like bid on it, you know, in an auction type of thing. So whereas like it started from the company and then it was given away and then came back. So there's things like relics like that we see out there that exist from these like auction houses, or because in the 50s, 60s, they didn't think ahead. They were, well, it sounds awful, like they were wonderful people, you know, but not to say like they screwed us over. They just,
No,
it
but,
wasn't
like,
like
they
the
just-
thought process, of preservation. But,
Right.
So yeah, they gave away a lot of things, or people from production took things home. Animators took home drawings or little maquettes from the studios, and but then they kind of show up here in our day in like an auction house somewhere, and we're like, oh, we probably should get that and try and go about getting it.
You're like, well, that one is ours.
Yeah.
What are the trends of okay, now we're going to make sure we save everything. Now we're going to make sure, like,
Yeah.
we're not giving anything away to then have to
Yeah.
get it later.
Yeah, that's a good call because that's what I started at with the company was in the archives was I was on the acquisitions team. So I was making sure I was watching everything that the company made.
Yeah.
When it came to the films, like the theme parks assets are a whole nother like monster, but especially for the like production, costumes, props, things. I pretty much just like watch the shows and then identify any like key hero artifacts. Like if it was like here's the crazy example. Obviously, it's like you're watching a Marvel movie and it's Thor's hammer, and it's like, okay, well, we definitely want Thor's hammer. You know,
Right.
we want like his costume. We want like the main looks. But then we'd work with like a Hulu show, and they would just turn over, you know, every costume, and it's all just like modern day H&M clothes that production bought for,
Right.
you know, and so those types of things were like, well, we don't need all of this. We need maybe
Right.
that like one or two looks from the main actors.
Yeah.
Maybe if there was something significant that happened in this scene, like I use, you know, Devil Wears Prada. We have the blue cerulean blue sweater that she spills her like corn chowder soup or you know soup on, and there's still like the stain on it. So it's like that's like an iconic scene.
Right.
So we look at like what is like a turning point in the film or an iconic or a hero moment, and what objects are they using? What are they wearing? That would be like, oh yeah, you see that in a museum, and you're like, oh, that's that part where she does this. That's the
Right.
thing. Yeah. So yeah, that's
That's
kind
cool.
of the criteria now is we don't have the space in the infrastructure to take everything.
Yeah.
And we can't. And we do have a system of not taking everything and then getting them placed at the right place, like donating objects or getting rid of or destroying things. Well, that shouldn't say destroy. We're just like making sure they're not getting out there. Like if they've made like 3 or 4 Thor's hammers, you know, we're not gonna like throw one in the garbage. Like that's you know not right. There's a whole, as a museum would, there's a whole system of deaccessioning things and placing them back, maybe back with production or with other things that would make sure they're properly taken care of and not like getting out into the wild and being bid on eBay or something.
Right.
Which would be cool to have, you know, that be able to just bid on eBay. I mean, you can. Like I've done it. I've bid on things. Yeah, because they exist everywhere. But you see a whole side of the world my eyes are open to was this Hollywood memorabilia auction world. And I mean, like on the East Coast, there's like the fine art scene, and there's like these Sotheby's and these like Banksy painting that you can bid on that then, you know, destroys itself. And that's art, you know, and it's cool. But here it's like ruby slipper, like Dorothy's ruby slippers are up on auction at this auction house for $30 million, you know,
Right.
those types of things. Then to me, that's just as much art as like the Picasso painting that was found and is being auctioned off at Sotheby's or something.
On a day-to-day basis, what does your job look like? What are you doing?
Day-to-day basis, you know, I run the company. I
am Walt Disney.
as the heir of the Disney Empire. No, so now I'm really working with museums. I'm not so much doing our acquisition side where I'm picking what the archives is going to retain and accession into our collection. I am working with external forces and factors outside of Disney and internal to then get these things seen. Because with the mission of a museum and the mission of the Disney archives and most archives, obviously collect and preserve, but make accessible, then to make accessible to the public those things. You want them to be seen. You want something like Julie Andrews' historic carpet bag to not just be sitting in a vault for the rest of its life in cold storage in a vault, preserved, which is awesome, but to be put out on display at the Museum of the Moving Image, or you know, like or the Academy Museum in downtown in LA here nearby, or you know, or in the Smithsonian. You want those things to be seen by the public so people can appreciate them.
Right.
And so I, on a day-to-day, I work within the collection and within a collections team to assess objects to make sure they're preserved. I work on our database to kind of track the objects where they're at. And then I loan them, and I work with our legal team to draft agreements between the Disney company and museum or some institution that wants us to loan them costumes or props for a display they're doing or for an exhibit or for a show. And then I'll travel with those things because within our contract it's a high value object. It's, for instance, recently I'd worked with a museum in the Netherlands that wanted costumes from Titanic that Kate Winslet wore, that Leo DiCaprio wore, and they are valued, like they're high value. I mean, it's a Titanic.
Yeah.
So I traveled with the costumes, made sure they were installed properly, made sure they were safe, and then flew back. And at the end of the exhibit, 6 months later, flew back and did the same thing. So yeah,
That's
it's
so cool.
That's kind of day to day. It's like either I'm in office looking at objects, playing with toys. Ultimately, it's like I get to go through, the vaults of like the Disney vaults and see stuff that's like, that's in that 1950s movie I saw one time, or that's this from Ford v Ferrari, like Disney, non-Disney type of things where, because Disney owns so much now, I'm like, well, that's this, and then be like, well, that would be cool in this exhibit or on this display, and then also trying to figure out a network with museums, and then often they're reaching out to me and being like, can we're doing this exhibit, can we have things for our exhibit, and how does that work? And yeah,
that's so cool. We watched Indiana Jones for this episode. So basically, you're the person that would go through all of the boxes at the end of the movie. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, where are we going to get this scene?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So yeah, be the person in that, and a lot of our people who come, we don't really show. We keep it pretty private, obviously, and for good reason. They're undisclosed locations. Our vaults are throughout Burbank and Hollywood and everything. You go inside and it does look like that ending scene of Indiana Jones. So for me, it has been a full circle moment where growing up, those are my favorite films.
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, as I got older too and I studied history, it's kind of funny because the irony of like Indiana Jones is finding these artifacts, and his whole tagline is like, this belongs in a museum. And like it does, but then there's also this argument you have of, in history, there's things that shouldn't maybe be in a museum. They should be with like the people and cultures that it originated from, and not have been stolen or from an explorer or from a government or something, to then be like placed in a museum. And museums are doing their job these days to repatriate, to give back, and look at their collections and be like, actually, these skeletal remains of these indigenous people that we have in our collection should not be in a museum. They need to be properly given back to the communities that they were stolen from years ago, or these like relics that actually like the British Museum didn't, like they stole this. Like maybe this should be given back, So it's like, that's why I do love Indiana Jones, because it's like the romanticized idea of like this object and this relic that is this like turning point in a film that he's going to find and protect and keep out of the hands of the enemy, of the Nazis or something, and then get it into a museum or get it safe. And so like that's still, like, I root for that. But then there's also like the real history side. But then fortunately on the Disney side, it's like, we're not stealing anything. Like it is ours, we made it. So and they're objects that are created for a film or a TV or whatever. And so we have free reign to kind of play with them and do whatever we want with them. Yeah. But yeah, Indiana Jones really truly was like my childhood idol. And it wasn't necessarily what made me be like, I'm going to go into the museum field because of him. Because he's archaeologist, he's, so many other things than just a professor, but an explorer. But I was like, wow, like there is that side of that thrill of working with some magical relic or some object that means something, and he's out to find.
So how long have you been doing this, and how has it shifted over the time that you've been doing it?
My grad school, my undergrad was art history, and that actually sparked me in wanting to kind of work with museums, because I did a study abroad in Italy, and that was all for art history. While I was there, I also had like a visual art practice, so I was like painting and drawing outside of...
Which you're very talented.
Oh, thank you. I was doing that, but I haven't really done that much in these few years. But having class in these like museums with the David in Florence, or in different basilicas or different cathedrals in Rome, and you're just appreciating some fresco or some piece done in the Renaissance or done in the Baroque period, or all these things, And I remember being like, wow, this is cool, this idea. Or seeing like a conservator working on to like preserve and do
Right.
conservation on this oil painting. I was just always fascinated with that. So in my undergrad years in art history major, I was thrilled with the idea of looking back in the past, but then and talking about it in
Right.
our day,
Right.
and looking at what art says about the time it's in and the time it was created, and
Yeah.
what the artists were saying. I like that. But then in grad school, I did get an MFA. It was a scholarship from just and it's kind of like on a whim, my art practice. So I went kind of back into just doing visual art.
Yeah.
But it was at a very historic institution in Philadelphia that is also America's oldest art museum.
Yeah.
The Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, 1804, founded by the Peels, who were a family of artists who painted the portraits of George Washington and all those things. During that, I had internships where I was working for the museum. And so it was always, it switched then to, I've been doing it for, I guess, since maybe 2018 or so,
Yeah.
working in kind of a museum context throughout grad school, but it was always more just like the fine art. Like, I'll tell like a funny story. I remember when I got my job at Disney, you know, because I had my community in New York and Philly,
Right.
and these people, these profound and powerful artists that were influential in Philadelphia that showed and exhibited in big galleries and museums even, and were working living artists. And I was close with some of them because of my MFA days.
Right.
I had this one artist that I really liked, and her practice, she was a photographer, but just her style was really cool. And I connected well with her. She was one of my art critics that had helped me and mentored me. We would just meet together for like drinks and talk at her like studio. And I remember when I got the Disney job and I was going to leave like the fine art world
Right.
to go work for the corporate mouse, you know,
Right.
I was afraid to tell her because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like she's gonna turn her nose up at me. She's gonna
Right.
be like, really, like Disney's not art. You're going to work for like the corporate, mass-produced,
Right.
global entity that is just to make money, and not be like the struggling artist that you've been
Right.
fighting for this whole time. And I waited till the end of our conversation, because the whole conversation she's like, oh, I was just talking to this gallery owner. I think you need to meet him. Like, you should get your paintings up at this gallery. And like, what's your next plan for your next show? And I was like, honestly, nothing. It's moving to LA. I just got this job.
Yeah.
And so when I told her I was gonna switch and move from the fine art world to preserving things for this company, I wish I remember the word for word what she said. I wrote it in my journal for sure. But she was very touched, and she was like, wow. She said, you know, there is something there. She's like, that is art and that is history. And she said, I will always remember. It's the first time I'd ever heard her ever talk about Disney as something that was important.
Right.
She's like, he influenced art.
Yeah.
She said, I will always remember being a girl and watching the Cinderella dress transformation scene, like that art where she had, you know, rags to the ball gown. And she said, and it always stuck with me. She's like, you get to go and work with that art. That's precious and really cool. And I remember being like, wow. And she was so supportive. Of course, she probably wasn't going to tell me in the moment, like, you're ruining your career. But she was like, she attributed a lot of what she's been influenced by,
Right.
back to her young days as a girl watching
Yeah.
early Disney animated films.
Yeah.
And I think we all can in ways, and so many people can. And so I've always been an advocate for, like, this is art,
Yeah.
you know, and that's why I love what I get to do. Is I have the opportunity to get Disney in the museum space,
Yeah.
you know, and bridge fine art with Disney art, you know, and that's really fun for me.
Yeah. As you're now a professional, like, what things should we be aware of, or should we bring back from like early preservation days? What are things we should keep in mind as we're going forward?
Yeah, I think something that I saw actually in the museum world and the fine art world, a concern they had was in our modern art. Back in the day, it was really like photography, paintings,
Right.
Sculptures, marble, busts, all these things.
Right.
And we have in place the studies and the knowledge of how to preserve those things,
Yeah.
and work with those mediums. Today, artists are making things that are still cool. It's art, but it's not meant to last.
Sure.
And they're making things out of found objects that they found on the streets of New York or something, and super gluing these objects together, and then it degrades over time.
Right.
And maybe that's part of their message, this idea that these things aren't made to last and it was just used for that moment. But that still is kind of a concerning idea of great art is being made, but it's not made in the quality or in the way that, or the process that we're used to. I've always thought about that, of like, as an artist myself, I champion this idea of like breaking the norms and creating something that is different. You know, I worked with this huge painting that belonged to a museum. We were trying to do a condition report of it because it was going to go on loan.
Right.
But the painting, we had to keep saying in our condition notes that issues were inherent to the piece, because every 6 months when we looked at it, what was a new issue and what was supposed to be there,
Right.
because it was made from like hay and straw, and naturally pieces of the hay and straw would fall out, you know, and fall on the floor, and you had to pick that up. And I think the artist intended it that way. What will this piece look like in 100 years? Definitely not what it looked like then.
Yeah.
But that is kind of an interesting, well, maybe that's just what it's supposed to be, you know? So I guess things that we like look for is like, so many things are just made on the cheap because productions they have budgets.
Right.
And an object is like made cheaply because it's only going to be seen on camera for a few minutes. So it's us having to figure out how to take care of something that degrades over time. Again, back to like puppets, you know, the Muppet Studio, those types of things, Jim Henson Company things, they weren't making these puppets out of acid-free archival materials. Foam degrades and turns into like toast and falls out of the puppet, and the puppet deflates, you know? So it's like those things we have to look at now and be like, okay, well, maybe the things we make today, if we want them to last, we need to figure out the ways to do them so that in the future we can avoid these headaches of it. Truly, it's not like really an issue we all have to be like worried about. But I mean, I guess I will say something I do find maybe not an issue but exciting, but something that we can all think about is back to that auction world. Here's my hot take and opinions of like the fine art world. There's a lot of auction houses, like I said, in the East Coast that philanthropists, like really wealthy individuals and art buyers and dealers who invest in art just as an investment, and then that art piece stays hidden away in this cold storage with an art services company, never to be seen, but they purchase it as if it was like a stock in like a company. And I think the same goes for like certain objects from Hollywood memorabilia that get put out in auction. I've auctioned personally, not through Walt Disney Company, but personally I have bid on things I wanted in an auction house, like on a small scale. We're talking like $2 million. I have $2 million in the bank, so I've got a lot of money. Just kidding. So on a small scale of like $500, $600, $700, or $1,000 or something. Once I've like won the auction house will email me and be like, "Do you actually want it, or would you like it to stay with us and like increase in value over time, and then you can re-auction it off later?" And so I always kind of rolled. I was like, "That's so funny." It's like, most of the people buying these things are not buying it for their house so they can just like, it can be appreciated by friends and family and guests. They're buying it for the investment value, to then, you know, keep it stored where it is and then sell and get money out of it, which is fine. But it's funny to see the world we are in of like, on the one hand, you want these objects seen, and there's a community that wants them seen in the museums. On the other hand, it's like, well, this is actually an investment opportunity, and these things could just be invested in and then stayed in, like, never seen by anyone, but you'll make a lot of money from it.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's rude.
It belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum, as our good friend Indiana Jones says. That belongs in a museum.
That belongs in a museum. Yeah.
Maybe that covers it a little bit too, but like, what are some of the biggest icks that you see within your job?
Well, okay, yeah, here's an ick is working with collections, because I used to collect a lot of things. Like I wanted to have historic comic books, You know, I remember the first time I went to a Comic-Con in New York. This was a couple years ago. I'd never been.
I bet that was so fun.
It was so fun. And I remember my eyes were, and this was pre-Disney, I was still in grad school. My friend was like, let's go to New York Comic-Con. And we walk in, and there were just rows and rows of like historic comic books. And they were so widely accessible.
Right.
But in my mind, I didn't realize that like, I'm thinking like, this is a 1950s comic book. Holy cow, I could make a lot of money from this. I mean, I got into that like,
Right.
I can invest in this, you know, and it's a beautiful piece of art. So I was buying all these comic books, not realizing that like the whole idea of like mint condition and limited edition and those things, I just saw like this old piece of like comic paper that was in this sleeve and it was exciting. So I kind of became a hoarder. So, and I started collecting a lot of things. And naturally, you know, you go to a museum, and I think a lot of museums are hoarders. I'm not going to say the museum because I can't, I'm not here. I won't say the museum. But I worked for a museum in New Jersey. I was contracted to inventory all their collection.
Yeah.
And most of the collection was just trash stuff that they thought, like they had a curator or they had a collections manager previously be like, well, we need to save all this stuff. We need to save all this stuff. And I was like, actually, no. Like it was like driftwood from the local like river that they thought might be important one day. And it's like, well, we don't need to keep the driftwood, like, you know, or stuff like that.
Did it do something?
And each piece of the driftwood needed to be cataloged, and it was taking space in this big warehouse.
Yeah.
And hundreds and thousands of pieces of driftwood, and they weren't even like a science or museum. They were like an art museum. They were just like a standard old museum, and they were keeping everything. So the ick I see is like when a museum becomes a hoarder, and this idea that sometimes maybe limited quantities of the object makes it more valuable. And I see that within production. There's a lot of waste in production. Some TV show, they go out and they buy all these clothes and then maybe don't use half of them and then turn it all over to the archives. You know, we'll be like, well, we're not going to preserve all these like H&M clothes. We'll
Right.
donate them, you know, and
Right.
so we'll get them to a good home. Also in production, like they'll maybe make, back in the day they didn't because they
Right.
made one carpet bag.
Right.
But in like if they made Mary Poppins today, they would make 5 or 6 carpet bags for the stand-in, for the stunt, for the VFX, and like each carpet bag looked the same. And so it's kind of like the value of it is maybe less because there's more of it. And so then when an archives perspective, it's like, well, do we keep all 6 carpet bags that look the exact same?
Right.
And it's like, no, which one did Mary Poppins actually use, like the main actress? But maybe like, I don't know, some like modern live action they're doing, and maybe they make like 6 or 7 of Maui's hooks.
Right.
And it's like, well, which one did Dwayne Johnson actually use?
Yeah.
This one. Let's keep that one.
Yeah.
And maybe as like a backup, if we needed to have like 2 loans going at the same time to a museum, we'll keep the like stunt used one.
Sure.
You know, whereas like we don't need all 6. But there are people within these collections fields that are like, no, keep it all. But then that's my ick, because I'm like, we're just cluttering. It makes it less valuable if there's like 10 of them versus if there was only 3 that existed.
Right.
You know, not to say we destroy the others, but in our collection, we only maybe need 1 or 2. And so trying to have that mindset as a collector, what do we need that will speak to the collection as a whole and will enhance it? So that's an ick, is hoarding.
Yeah. Gross.
Yeah, gross.
Gross.
And I became a hoarder. I did. Actually, you do. My first year, I was buying every little cutesy thing, everything I was collecting, every little knick-knack. I mean, I went to Japan on a work thing, and there my eyes were opened. I was like, whoa, in Japan, everybody's a Disney adult. You know, like we judge Disney adults here because but in Japan, like that's life. Everyone wants, you buy the cutesy things and you pin them on your bag and all that. And so I remember like getting really into that and realizing that I like this stuff.
Yeah.
And like I came back and my desk was cluttered with it all. Now I'm kind of like de-accessioning, decluttering. Because like, wait, this is too much. And I'm turned off by the idea of hoarding now that I'm always just with assets and tons and tons of stuff.
Well, and the things that you do keep are more valuable.
Are more valuable, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as we wrap this up, what is happening right now for you, or what are you looking forward to? Yeah, that's just like
Yeah.
next in your journey.
Next in my journey, I am traveling a lot for work, working with these institutions and museums. That has been ramping up and has become very exciting because there's a lot of connections we're making, and I'm excited about that. Excited about like the future of certain objects that I'm envisioning getting them out for the world to see, museum guests and everything to go to. Personally, I am trying to go back to painting. The exciting thing is I'm trying to have a better balance of, yes, like my work life is cool and I'm in the Disney vaults, or I'm traveling with the Disney assets and I'm working on the other side of the world in some museum in Sweden or something. But how do I say, I'm a little like Disneyed out, I love it.
Yes.
Like, keep me there, don't fire me, but I love it. But I want to have better balance. So what I'm excited for is like projects or personal. I want to do this painting series of LA, of kind of get back to creating my own stuff that will become my own like collection that I can sell or gift. I used to do that, but I'm excited to have maybe a better balance now, because I finally feel it's been 2.5 years of me being in the company, and I'm at a good place where I'm kind of understand the ropes and what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Right.
So I can continue to do that while also taking time for me outside of work to do the things I enjoy.
Well, and I imagine it would be hard for me at least, whenever I'm like on set and I'm not in like a key position or something, and I'm like seeing the actors do their thing, I'm like, oh man, I wish I was acting, So I can imagine that like being around all of that stuff all the time, you're like, man, but like I also have my own things that I want to like contribute to the world and to bring to life. So
100%. Yeah, I love some of my favorite things in the collection of the archives are actual concept art and drawings from like, matte paintings back before we had green screen and special effects. Like they painted matte paintings as like backgrounds, and when I'm working with that, I'm like, this is an artist that painted this, and I paint too, and I wanna contribute. I want to build and create my own thing. And so it is inspiring to be on a movie set and to see the actors doing it, and you're like, well, that's what I also like to do. I want to contribute in that way too.
That's so cool.
I love that.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lauren.
This
was
was
fun.
a pleasure, and can't wait to
you.
see your collection.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll sell you a painting, $2 million.
Please.
Soon. Right. We'll put it up there.
Just over this.
Over
actually.
whatever this these
whatever
things are.
this is.
Whatever this award is.
Get that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, totally. No, thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Now that we've talked to Taylor, let me call my boss. I mean, it's a classic, right? Most of us have already seen it before, but it was really cool to go back and see the different stylings of Spielberg. I think one thing that Spielberg is so good at is creating suspense. Whether it's them fighting on a plane and that the propeller is coming, there's a lot of plants and payoff, which I found really, really exciting, and I think is one thing that Steven does well. I was a little shocked by how much violence there is in this. Like, obviously I knew that, but it just took me by surprise a little bit. But it was really cool to see how many of like the stunts and everything were just so practical. Hats off to stunt people. What they do is just so incredible. So let's make sure we're giving them their time to shine, giving them opportunities to work. What wouldn't I bring back? Honestly, I think the things that I wouldn't bring back are more to do with like Marianne as a character. I remember growing up and being like, oh my gosh, Marianne is the coolest person, which like she is. But then watching it now as an adult, I was like, oh, so she's just a male fantasy. I remember being like, oh, well, she's an adventurer and she's like all of these things. And then now watching it, I'm like, oh, she's kind of just there. I don't remember her involvement in the later films, but I just hope that she's like an intellectual person and that she, knows how to fight people. I mean, that's what Indiana Jones is about, right? Finding treasure, fighting people, yada, yada, yada. But overall, I mean, it was so good to reminisce. I just remember it being so iconic and such a great household movie. I liked it. I'd watch it again. Great job, George and Steven.
You might not be able to do that.
Okay, looking forward to it. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you for watching. Tune in to a new episode on Monday.